All right, welcome back, everyone. We've got a lot to dig into today.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack.
So we're going to be diving deep into President-elect Trump's picks for his second-term cabinet.
Some interesting choices for sure.
I mean, that's why we're here, right? Got to break it all down.
Absolutely.
And we're basing this on the article by, Thomas Beaumont from November 14th.
Yep, that's the one.
And what's really got me thinking is what these picks tell us, about where Trump wants to take things in his second term.
It's a bit of a puzzle, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. But one thing's clear to me. Trump is putting a premium on loyalty this time around.
Definitely seems that way.
So are you ready to meet the team? Some of these names might just surprise you.
Let's start with Secretary of State. It's Marco Rubio.
Yeah, that was a bit of a head-scratcher for me. I mean, he called Trump a con man at one point.
He did, didn't he? Now he's going from Trump critic to, well, top diplomat.
I mean, do you think this signals like a more unified Republican front? Or is there maybe something more strategic going on?
It's probably a bit of both, honestly. Bringing Rubio in really solidifies the Republican power, especially on foreign policy.
Right.
Rubio's pretty hawkish on countries like China, Cuba, and Iran.
So he's more likely to use military force, is what you're saying?
Generally, yeah. And that stance, well, it aligns with Trump's own views.
Okay, so that's definitely something to watch. A potentially more aggressive foreign policy. And speaking of potential for controversy, Matt Gaetz as Attorney General.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
He'd be one of the youngest ever at 42. And then there's that whole House Ethics Committee investigation he just resigned from.
Yeah, that's going to be a topic for sure.
A bold move for Trump, wouldn't you say?
Bold, for sure. Gaetz is a staunch Trump loyalist through and through, known for his, let's say, fiery rhetoric and his willingness to challenge the status quo.
And Trump specifically mentioned, Gaetz's role in ending weaponized government. Sounds like we can expect some major shakeups in the Justice Department.
It'll be interesting to see how Gaetz handles the complexities of that role, especially given his background.
Definitely. Now, this one really threw me. Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence.
Yeah, that was unexpected.
She's a former Democrat who endorsed Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't really have the traditional intelligence background of her predecessors.
It's a big change, that's for sure. The Director of National Intelligence basically oversees all the intelligence agencies like the CIA and NSA.
Right.
It's a crucial role in shaping national security policy.
And appointing someone from outside the intelligence community.
Right.
Especially a former Democrat. That's a huge departure from the norm.
Yeah, no doubt about that. It seems like Trump is valuing loyalty and a fresh perspective over deep experience in this case. Could suggest a significant shift in how intelligence is gathered and analyzed in his second term.
Okay, so next we have Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary. He served in the military, but doesn't have the high-level national security experience you'd usually expect for this position.
And he's walking into a pretty volatile global situation. The war in Ukraine, Middle East attacks, the Israel-Hamas-Hezbollah conflict, the Russian-North Korea alliance. It's a lot to handle.
Talk about trial by fire.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes you wonder if Trump is prioritizing alignment with his America First worldview over, extensive experience in this case.
It's a pattern we're seeing with a few of these picks.
All right, brace yourselves, folks, because this next one is causing a lot of buzz. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as Health and Human Services Secretary.
This is perhaps the most unconventional pick of them all.
His stance on vaccines is definitely raising eyebrows, to put it mildly.
Kennedy's been a vocal critic of vaccines, even promoting those debunked claims linking them to autism.
Yeah.
And that has public health experts deeply concerned about the potential impact on vaccination policy and, well, public health in general.
It's a huge area of responsibility, and his appointment can signal a major shift in health policy.
Definitely one to watch closely. Now, another pick that's generating strong reactions, Tom Homan as border czar. He's promised to run the biggest deportation operation this country's ever seen.
Sounds like a direct line back to Trump's campaign promises on immigration.
Exactly. Homan is known for his hardline stance on immigration from his time at ICE. This appointment could mean a significant escalation in deportation efforts, which has already drawn criticism from Democrats.
And lastly, there's Stephen Witkoff, Trump's golf buddy, as special envoy to the Middle East. What do you make of this one?
It's an interesting choice. Witkoff doesn't have a lot of diplomatic experience, but he was present during the second assassination attempt on Trump.
Right.
So there's clearly a deep level of personal trust there.
That must have created a unique bond. Okay, so we've seen some really surprising picks here. It's clear that Trump is building a team of loyalists, but there's a real mix of conventional and unconventional backgrounds.
And that mix is key to understanding what Trump's vision for his second term might be. You've got someone like Doug Burgum for Interior Secretary, for example.
Oh yeah, Burgum.
He's a governor, experience in public service. Fits the traditional mold, you could say?
A solid, experienced pick. But then you have these, outliers like Tulsi Gabbard and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. What do you think Trump is trying to achieve with this blend of, like, the expected and the totally unexpected?
I think he's aiming for balance, in a way. Bringing in some seasoned players, for stability.
Sure.
But then also surrounding himself with people who really align with his vision, even if it ruffles some feathers.
Right, right.
This tension between the conventional and the unconventional, well, that's something to watch closely, I think.
So potentially a mix of playing it safe and shaking things up makes me even more curious about the rest of the appointments.
Oh, there are some interesting ones.
Quickly, let's just run through some of the other, key positions.
Okay, so for Homeland Security, there's Kristi Noem,
No, okay.
staunch conservative, Trump loyalist. John Ratcliffe is returning to the intelligence world, this time as CIA director. And Doug Collins, who fiercely defended Trump during his first impeachment.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
He'll be leading Veterans Affairs.
Interesting.
Then there's Lee Zeldin, heading the Environmental Protection Agency,
Zeldin.
despite, limited experience in environmental issues. And Susie Wiles, the mastermind behind Trump's comeback campaign, she's stepping into the pretty powerful role of chief of staff.
So a lot of familiar faces in the mix.
And Wiles' appointment, that's particularly interesting.
How so?
Well, she really understands Trump's political instincts, his messaging.
I see.
Could be key in shaping the administration's overall strategy,
So it seems like Trump is really building a tight inner circle of, well, trusted advisors.
Oh, absolutely. Loyalty is clearly paramount. You see that again with Mike Waltz, former Green Beret, and China Hawk taking on the role of national security advisor.
Given the rising tensions with China, that's a critical position.
Absolutely. And speaking of key figures from Trump's past, Stephen Miller is back as Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy.
Oh, wow. Miller's back.
He was the architect of some of the most controversial immigration policies during the first term, remember?
Yeah, I remember.
So it looks like we can expect a continuation of those hardline immigration policies.
Yeah.
Then there's Dan Scavino returning as Deputy Chief of Staff, and James Blair, who played a crucial role in shaping Trump's economic messaging, also joining as Deputy Chief of Staff.
Deputies.
And to round out the team, there's Taylor Budowich as Deputy Chief of Staff for Communications and Personnel, and William McGinley returning as White House Counsel.
Okay, so a lot of names, a lot of positions, but looking at the full picture here, the emphasis on loyalty is, it's undeniable.
It is, yeah.
Trump is surrounding himself with people who have really proven their allegiance. Often, it seems like prioritizing that over, traditional experience or qualifications.
That's one way to put it.
And that raises the question for our listeners, what does this, this loyalty-first approach mean for the actual work of governing?
Right.
Will it create a more efficient administration, or could it lead to potential blind spots?
It's a double-edged sword, really.
I see.
On one hand, this close-knit team could lead to smoother decision-making, a more unified front.
Makes sense.
But on the other hand, it could also create an echo chamber, where dissenting voices are stifled, potentially leading to less effective governance.
So there's a real trade-off there. But going back to what you mentioned earlier, the mix of conventional and unconventional choices is really fascinating. We talked about Doug Burgum as a more traditional pick. Who would you say is the most unconventional out of this whole lineup?
That's a tough one. But I'd say Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
His stance on vaccines is far outside the mainstream scientific consensus.
It's definitely caused a stir.
It's a bold choice. Some might say reckless, even. Could have far-reaching consequences for public health.
Definitely a head-scratcher for many. It seems like, with this appointment, Trump is prioritizing a particular worldview over established expertise.
And that's what makes this cabinet so intriguing. It's a mix of seasoned politicians, loyal supporters, and individuals with, let's say, controversial viewpoints. Really raises the question, what kind of second term is Trump setting up?
What do you think? For our listeners, what are your initial reactions to this cabinet? Are there any appointments that particularly stand out to you? And what are you most curious to see unfold as these individuals step into their roles?
It's a lot to process, right?
Yeah, definitely a lot to take in.
Yeah.
But that's why we're here, I guess, to, help break it all down, understand what these choices could mean.
Exactly. And as these appointments, head into the confirmation process, things could get interesting.
Oh, yeah. The Senate hearings.
Yeah.
That'll be must-watch TV. I'm already stocking up on popcorn.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the drama of it all. It's about trying to understand how these folks will actually govern. What are their priorities going to be? How will they, actually use their power?
That's the real test, isn't it? Anyone can make promises, give a good speech.
Right, right.
But it's what they do in office, their actions, that will actually shape, the direction of the country.
So for our listeners, I'd say, pay close attention to these appointees as they, settle into their roles. Watch how they interact with Congress, how they implement policy, how they respond to the inevitable challenges that come up.
There will be challenges, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Because their decisions, they're going to have a ripple effect, not just in Washington, but across the nation. Even globally, you could argue.
Yeah, the world's watching. And remember, this is just the beginning, really. We're still in the early days of Trump's second term.
Right.
There could be more surprises in store, more shakeups, more, unconventional moves.
Knowing Trump, that's almost guaranteed.
He certainly likes to keep things interesting.
But he does. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Trump's second-term cabinet picks, I want to leave you with one final thought. We've talked about loyalty, experience, controversy, but there's another element that's, I think, crucial to understanding this moment in American politics.
Oh, and what's that?
Change. These appointments, they really signal a changing of the guard, a shift in the power dynamics, and the potential for, new directions, new approaches. And change, it can be, exciting and unsettling all at the same time.
I see what you're saying.
It can bring about progress and innovation,
Right.
but it can also create uncertainty and instability.
It's a double-edged sword, like we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to our listeners, I urge you, don't just observe these changes from afar. Dive in, get involved, make your voices heard. Because the future isn't something that just, happens to us. It's something we create together.
Well said.
Who knows what surprises Trump might have in store for us next?
Oh, the possibilities are endless.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and those curiosity gears turning. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure.